I hope. Hello, Garland Nixon here. And it's Wednesday morning. I'm hanging out with Laith Marouf, and we got a lot to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Laith Marouf. And before we get started, got to remind everybody, Laith has a website and it's called freepalestine.video. Make sure you go there. They do a lot of English language. They do English language work to make sure people that are outside of the region, he's out of Beirut, get the latest information and get really good news. And he works with young people, work with various people around there that really need to learn the trade of journalism, an honest trade. We're trying to make sure that it grows in that direction. So go to freepalestine.video. What is critical is when you get there that you donate. And if you can't afford to donate, we understand a lot of people are struggling. Whether you can or cannot afford to donate, what's important is share freepalestine.video on all of your social media platforms. And then just put a little note above it, the post that remind people that go to that site, check out the information, follow them on all of their social media links, and commend people to donate. Let's keep freepalestine.video up. Let's keep all of this good info coming out. We really need it. It's critical to battle the Western propaganda. All right, let's get going. I'm going to start with you, Laith. The big stories. What's the number one top story coming out of your region?
Well, I'm just a few minutes late to get on the show because I was out filming. Today is Ashura commemorations, and for our viewers who don't know what Ashura is, it's the most important religious commemoration in the Shia Muslim calendar. It is a commemoration of the martyrdom of Hussein, the grandson of Prophet Muhammad. And this marks basically the schism within Islam. That day is when Muawiyah and the father of the Umayyad Empire usurped the Khalifa position, and the people in the Muslim world called on Hussein to face off against the usurper, and who basically ended the democratic experiment in Islam, the shura, the consultation to choose who is the Khalif, and was installing a dynasty, basically bloodline-based rule by the Umayyad family. And so Hussein went to Karbala in Iraq, supposedly so when all the people will join him to face off against the Umayyad military, but nobody showed up. And Hussein and the family of Muhammad were left alone, facing off a force of 30,000 somewhat, and they were all mostly slaughtered and captured and paraded half naked. The granddaughters of Muhammad paraded through Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Lebanon, back to Damascus, to basically at the feet of the Umayyad emperor. So you could imagine how this story of sacrifice of Hussein is so important to the selflessness that you see in what drives people to become members of Hezbollah as a Shia, or Ansarullah in Yemen as a Shia group, that they pull on this well. And today, this was the biggest Ashura commemorations in the Dahiya of Beirut that has been recorded in decades. It's in the middle of the war, and all the propaganda on the walls, the big banners, all of these things are saying today's Karbala is Gaza. and the wives and children and daughters and sons of Muhammad that were paraded through the desert thirsty and are the people of Gaza, the Palestinians. So you could see how this actually drove people to come out. And while we were there, we were interviewing people, and we also noticed that there was all these anti-drone weapons on top of the rooftops in the region, in the area of the square where the parade ends, and where also Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah had a huge screen and gave a speech at the end of it. And in his speech, I would say the most important thing to note is that he said, starting from today, any attacks on civilians in Lebanon will not anymore entail a response on military targets or empty houses, that there will be an actual count, one for one civilian killed immediately without any hesitation, and that there will be new colonies in the north of occupied Palestine that haven't been yet targeted that will also become targets. So we're, this is the news of the day, I could say.
So that was, and who said that again? Who was I missed that. Who was the one that made that statement?
So Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the
okay.
Secretary General of Hezbollah, at the end of the commemoration day, there was a speech that was broadcasted on televisions, but also on these huge screens inside the Dahi, and specifically in the square where the Ashura parade ended.
Wow. So now the Israelis have been operating with reckless abandon, attacking civilians, figuring, we can be as ruthless. It's interesting because the concept was we can be ruthless and we can be murderous because our adversaries are humane. It kind of reminds me of what I see going on with the West in Ukraine. And that is, we can do all kinds of terrible things. We can say the Russians are mad, crazy, violent people, but we can attack Russia. We can kill civilians. We can do all of these terrible things. Why? Because the Russians are reasonable and they won't attack back. You know what I mean? It's saying I can abuse and mistreat someone else because that person is sensible. And that person's reasonable, but I'm an animal. I'm a brute. I'm a senseless madman, and so therefore I can take advantages of that, and it makes sense to me because at some point you have to say, look, I can't allow you to continue to do this, and so it certainly, to me, I think that the resistance has taken the moral high ground and said, look, morally, we're not going to attack civilians. But at some point, the moral high ground turns into a point where you are now leaving your civilians naked. Maybe at some point you have to say, look, the only way I will get you to stop attacking and killing my civilians, the only way I'll get you to take some consideration is if you feel pain. If you punch me, I don't want to punch back, but I have to punch back.
Yeah, and I mean, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah in multiple speeches over the last week, and also over the last 2 months, he said Hezbollah in an full-out war that the Zionists may force us to engage in will have no ceilings, no limits, no regulations that it will follow in its warfare. So they will not wait for the Israelis to commit a Dahiya doctrine or a Gaza doctrine, as we see now, which is even more severe than a Dahiya doctrine, on the civilians of Lebanon, and that without meting the same kind of violence on the Zionist colonies. So that's for one. Number two is that last week there was the release of the Hudhud 2, the Hoppo 2 drone video montage, and Hezbollah specifically concentrated on the Golan Heights, the Syrian Golan Heights occupied by the Israelis in this video. And they showed all the infrastructure of the Israeli military, including the tunnel entrances to the underground facilities inside the mountain. Okay, so, and they also showed that they had ran at least 3 different surveys with these drones over the Golan Heights over the last 9 months. It says survey 1, survey 2, survey 3. You see in the shots and the edits, and you see winter and snow peak, and then you see grass, and now you see summer a little bit drier. So clearly one of them is also marked just before the attack, and at the same time they released the video, they also attacked the highest Israeli bases over Mount Hermon, and these are very important bases that are called the eyes of the state by the Israeli military. There's 8 bases on the heights of the mountain range parts of the Golan Heights that can see all the way to the border between Iran and Iraq, and can see all the way to the mountain ranges in South Turkey in the Taurus. So these are now, if they get attacked, they're completely blinded. This comes because the Israelis keep on attacking Lebanese villages, and they continue with their genocide. And as we see, the genocide is not going to stop. The Israelis have actually accelerated their genocide in Gaza. And yeah, like we're getting closer and closer to the full-out war. It will all depend on Netanyahu going to the Congress and the Senate in the joint meeting there next week, I think, where he's supposed to probably get the blessing to commit more genocide on the whole region.
Here's an article I wanted to ask you about. I read about this on a couple of different outlets. Israel, for the first time, confirms heavy tank losses inflicted by Gaza resistance. The Israeli military acknowledged it is suffering from a shortage of tanks, ammunition, and experienced officers in response to a petition from the High Court. So the Israelis have been basically saying, what we've heard from them. I mean, at one point it was like months in, and they said, yeah, we've had 2 deaths. You remember that? They were like, we've lost 2 officers, right? And I'm like, well, I've watched videos of, dozens, tens of it too. And then they were like, well, we might have lost a tank. Some guy twisted his ankle. It was it was silliness, right? And now apparently, as the political leadership, we want to attack Lebanon or whatever, apparently the military people, now that they have to be honest, are saying we're running out of tanks, we're running out of things. It seems to me that which I'll add this, it makes me more and more believe that their plan to attack Hezbollah is a bluff to attack, because the more I read it, and it's also a bluff to try to hide how devastated their military is, that the axis of resistance is pummeling Israel, and that their so-called powerful tanks and all of this kind of stuff is just, they've got to hide just how bad it is. It's looking the same as Ukraine. They send in we're sending in new tanks, we're sending in this. They get blown to smithereens every time. And it seems to me that the U.S. empire is facing the same plight in occupied Palestine. What's up with your
you remember, like I think when we started these segments, I was saying already that the Israelis must have lost at least half of their armaments, if you remember that. This was in the first 3 months, because we watched in the first 3 months even more so tens of tanks a day videos. So we don't know even the things that we were not watching. And Free Palestine TV is translating all the operation videos coming out of Gaza. And it's not only videos by Hamas or Islamic Jihad. There's the videos from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. There's the videos from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Then there's the videos from Mujahideen brigades, another group that I've never heard of, called Salahuddin brigades. There's so many groups. Now that we are doing this work, we're having to, look for more. What is happening? And now people are realizing there's how many actual Palestinian factions there are and how much they are involved. And there's many, by the way, Fatah is the party of Mahmoud Abbas. Many of their military wings and battalions inside Gaza releasing also daily videos of them destroying tanks and shelling positions and so forth. So it's clear that the Israelis right now are running out of their own homemade Merkava tanks. They can't produce enough. They will need American Abrams tanks and European tanks to supplement them, just like the Ukrainians. But here's why, partially, yes, it's been a bluff. They say that they want to attack Lebanon, but partially also Netanyahu and the Zionist colony as a whole has no choice if they want to survive, to maintain this fascist colony, but to go to further war. They can't declare ceasefire. That's a defeat. Okay. And he is betting on the coming Trump victory with his new vice president, Vance, who is ultra Zionist. And we saw the display of Zionism at the Republican Party, conference that just happened, and rabbis and reading from, it's clear what Netanyahu is betting on. He will have to drag whatever war he has until at least the American elections, maybe even January 6th, until Trump comes into power, or he has to figure out how to drag Biden's administration. Biden doesn't exist, so actually to get what's his name, their Secretary of State.
I call it the Blinken Sullivan administration, because he's long gone.
Exactly.
Gone.
Yeah. And so the question is about the war expanding is not that it's going to happen or not. It's for sure going to happen. The question is, when will it happen? When will it start? Will it start on the agenda that Netanyahu wants, which is with the coming of Trump, preferably, so he can have a full American invasion with him? Because clearly, the Republicans of Trump government want to stop the war in Ukraine so they can concentrate on the most valuable geopolitical location in the world, this region, before they can deal with. It's not like that they have some love for Russia or China. Before they deal with the other two big ones, they think they need to control this access point in the world, and otherwise they can't fight the Chinese development, and they can't fight off the Russians. So question is, will the axis of resistance go along with the agenda set by Netanyahu and wait for the war to come on them, or will they start it before themselves, and just like in October 7th? And anyways, how many Palestinians will be still alive by that point if we wait till January 6th, where already now we see 250,000 plus martyred people in Gaza, at least 1 million injured. So we're talking half of the population injured or killed already. How much can the Palestinians withstand?
Yeah, I think you're right. You said something today that I haven't heard anyone else say, because what we're hearing is, well, we've got a bunch of Republicans that they're like, no, we don't want to fool with Ukraine. We want to go after China. That's the big enchilada. But you're right. I hadn't thought about it, but you're right. It's not China. They want to go back and put all of their resources in the Middle East region, because that's where the oil is, and they know that if they lose that, which is, in my opinion, it's too late. You know what I mean? They've already lost that, and they've already lost it because the people in there have decided, nah, this is not going to happen. You got to go. And since the, kinetically and physically, have they lost it yet? No, they still have their bases, and they still have ships in the region, and they still have their, military outposts, which is, the Zionist colony, etc. But once the people in the region make up their mind, this is over, there's no coming back. And I believe that the people in the region have made up their mind. The United States must be ejected from the region. There's no way they're going to be able to stay in Iraq unscathed and stay in Syria unscathed. And there's no way they're going to be able to spread this thing like they think all over the place and maintain these bases. And might I add, when I look at what's happening in the Sahel region, they're losing Africa. And I believe, we've discussed this before, that if they start a conflict in the region, that the Africans will begin to say, you know what? You're weak over there. Perhaps we can attack some of the bases. Perhaps we can eject you from our region at the same time. And there will be coordinated attacks against maybe non-state actors and state actors combined against U.S. imperialism throughout the Middle East and throughout Africa. That's what they're not thinking about, that the Africans have had enough too, and that they are on the verge of acting. Might I add one more thing to that? The Russians have said, look, you want to arm our adversaries, we're going to arm your adversaries. I think that if that occurs, they will also be surprised to see what weaponry that the Africans have been provided, what some of the weaponry, the Russian weaponry that may be provided throughout the Middle East and throughout Africa to eject U.S. imperialism from I'm not going to say two regions, because to me it's all one region. Go ahead.
Yeah, look, yesterday there was the first attack on American base since the kind of detente between the United States and the resistance groups in Syria and Iraq was initiated at the beginning of the war. If you remember, there was many attacks on a daily basis on American bases in Iraq and Syria, and then the Americans bombed the headquarters of the Popular Mobilization Units inside the Ministry of Internal Security in Baghdad, and that led to a detente where there was no more back and forth attacks. But now we had 3 drones at least hit Ain al-Assad base, the largest American base in Iraq and Syria. And so the Americans admitted that there was this attack. They claim that the damage is only to material things and that nobody got injured. But remember, all the injuries seem to be concussions. Whenever the resistance attacks, they're the best in. They're better than the National Football League in causing concussions, the axis of resistance. But yeah, so we're back to that stage where right now this is going to be triggered. To see how Hezbollah has increased its attack, has used larger explosive heads, bigger drones, even drones carrying missiles, and also to see these attacks by yesterday. By the way, Yemen sank a tanker, an oil tanker that's carrying a Liberian flag, but it's owned by an Israeli company, with a suicide surface drone, unmanned surface drone. And this is the 3rd time they do something like this. The U.S. Aircraft carriers almost in the Arabian Sea, the replacement for the Eisenhower that ran away. And this is all building up as everybody's seeing what's happening in the United States. That is, excuse my language, is a shit show right now. There's, that gives place for people like Netanyahu that are viceroys within the empire. When there is no emperor, then the viceroys are running wild. They can, this is how empire works. And that's what he's expecting. He's becoming like the kingmaker. He's now gonna come, and after the quote-unquote assassination attempt on Trump, it was sealed, the presidency, or at least the illusion that the people are gonna elect Trump is now perfected in terms of reasoning. Yeah, so
I certainly agree with you on that. What anything going on with the various resistance factions? You mentioned resistance attacks on the base. The resistance. I know I've heard there's resistance factions now actually in Bahrain, but resistance in Syria, in Iraq. The push by the resistance in Iraq to force the U.S. to leave Iraq. What do you know about what's happening? And Yemen, et cetera. Certainly Ansar Allah with the brave work that they're doing. What news do we have on the various resistance forces?
So yesterday, the Israelis attacked just outside Damascus on the road between Damascus and Beirut, the main road. Two weeks ago or a week and a half ago, the first attack they did, they assassinated the former bodyguard of Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, who hasn't been his bodyguard for at least a decade or more. But the Israelis claimed that he was part of the arrangements for shipments of weapons to Hezbollah. And yesterday, the assassination they did was of one of the richest Syrian businessmen who owns a lot of hotels and import-export, and that the United States had already put him on the Caesar's sanctions list. And the accusation the Israelis were making is that he owns oil and products, imports, exports, trucks, and that these trucks have hidden parts in them where Hezbollah smuggles the missiles. Anyway, so this shows you also how the front in Syria is actually very, very important in this war, although many people think it's, why isn't it active? Well, really, it is active. The Israelis are attacking on a monthly basis, and the Syrian Golan Heights are attacked every day. Yes, they're being attacked from Lebanon, but this includes many forces that we don't know. Just last week, also while we were off, me and you, there is a group that is a military group here in Lebanon that is part of Hezbollah structures, but it's for Sunnis, Christians, Druze, secular people. Anybody that is not a Shia person can belong to this if you want to join the group. And they filmed an attack that they conducted on an Israeli base in North Palestine, announcing that they have been already active since the beginning of this war. There's already the SSNP, the Syrian Social National Party, the Amal movement, as well as other groups that we don't know, including also Palestinian groups that have been attacking Israeli positions in North Palestine and in the Golan Heights. A lot of this action is happening in the Golan Heights. So it's very active, the front in Syria. And, in terms of the Iraqi and Yemenis, they've been every day releasing videos of joint attacks by drone and guided missiles on Eilat, Rashrash in the south of Palestine, on the Aqaba Gulf and the Red Sea, and on Haifa, as well as the Golan Heights. And this is, very coordinated with the Lebanese resistance, and it's hitting targets every day.
Wow. Any other major stories going on that you think are of concern? One of the things I did want to ask you about is the political stability, such as Jordan. It was perceived that Jordan assisted the U.S. imperialism in the defense of Israel when it came to the Iran attack of April, when it comes to various missiles that are being fired and drones by the resistance, that the Jordanese government is working with that. I know the people in Jordan have been in the street, unhappy with their government, that they're supporting the Palestinians. What's up with in the region, not just Jordan, but with the political stability, with so many of these governments siding with U.S. imperialism in defiance of, in some instances, 99 and 100% of their population?
Yeah, I mean, Jordan had a big demonstration this Friday. Um, Remember that coincided, I think, the day before it was the massacre in Al Mawasi and in Khan Yunis, and the attacks on the tents by these bunker buster bombs that Biden gave to the Israelis. And so we saw like a resurgence of the demonstrations. The Jordanian government is going to be calling for elections right now. I think they're trying to distract some of the street. I don't know how much, how many parties will be allowed to actually participate in these useless elections. In Jordan, even when you get elected, you don't choose the prime minister. The party that wins doesn't choose the prime minister or the government. It's the king that appoints them. It's not even the parliament. So it's very symbolic, even the meaning of having this Congress that they have, the parliament. They can only question the government. They can't even create laws and pass budgets. Anyways, so Jordan is very unstable. And in the case of a full-out war, remember, the Israelis will have to find backup airports, airfields to land their jets, and that's most likely going to be in Jordan and Cyprus. And one more thing about Jordan is that they just announced late last week signing an agreement with NATO to have a presence for NATO and to become, a junior kind of partner, which is, kind of like the Abrahamic normalization, which is already there. Jordan is occupied. There's thousands of German, French, Italian, Spanish, as well as British and American troops on the ground in Jordan. It's always been the buffer to protect the Zionist colony since its creation. That was the whole purpose of creating Jordan. So in the case of a full-out war, Jordan will be a target for sure. There's hundreds of thousands of Iraqi resistance members that are just waiting at the border right now with Jordan in case the situation happens. They will have to go in and disrupt the whole presence of America and its NATO military forces on the ground in Jordan.
Yeah, I suspect that in the event that there is an all-out war, if the Israelis land in Jordan, well, there are people working at the airport who are I will guarantee you that there are people in Jordan who are members of the resistance working at the airport, working various places, that there's no way that they're going to be able to land those planes at the airport and take off without facing some kind of attacks. But at any rate, there's something else I wanted to ask you. Well, let me throw this at you. Since you're outside the region, we saw this Trump thing happen, this assassination attempt on Trump. And you've got a couple of things that are being discussed here, right? I've been looking into it. I got a background in law enforcement investigations, and man, there's some very suspicious stuff. I mean, some guy's wandering around with a friggin' ladder. He's, there's a bunch of buildings, and one of the buildings has nobody on it, and this guy just happens to select the one that has nobody on it. How did he figure that out? And they saw him. Now we understand the police took like a picture of him like a half hour, an hour beforehand. There were people yelling, "Hey, there's a man in a building with a rifle." At some point you look at it and you're like, how much of this is incompetence? How much of this is complicity, particularly in the context of the United States? Let's face it. This is a fascist country. that has a history of killing everybody from a couple of the Kennedys, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, of killing people if they fought. Now, not that Trump isn't one of them, but there's some areas they may not like, right? So I'm highly suspicious of this thing, enough to say, if I was Trump, I wouldn't guess that this is going to be the last attempt. Anyway, how has it been viewed? You know, how do you think people in your region see that? Oh, when I had one other thing, and Biden comes out and says, there's no place in this country for political violence. In this country, they've killed the president before, and they're committing violence all over the world. But there's no place. He's Biden. But anyway, your thoughts on all of this, of the absurdities surrounding this?
Well, look, I'll tell you my thoughts, and so I can't vouch for what the rest of the people around here think. But I definitely believe if you commit to a theory or a thought, you have to go all the way. You can't be like half foot here, half foot there. If you believe that there is a media empires that are manufacturing consent and that there is real owners of the country behind the corporations, behind all the politics, you can't then say that Trump is an outsider. I mean, for me, it's all a show. Trump and Biden are a show. They're puppets, both of them. They're playing. It's great. I mean, I personally think that the elite wanted now the people to think that Trump is going to be legitimately elected. Look, the majority of Americans don't vote, right?
Right.
Majority
Most
of
people don't
Americans
like either one of these people.
have lost faith in the whole system. Okay, and already the few that were still voting, huge amounts of them were walking out because of Biden's genocidal position, and they're saying, "What the hell?" Even so, there was a need to create a magnet that drives people back into the fold of pretending that there is a democracy. Okay, and the debate, the very early debate, purposefully put there with Biden being made to look like a zombie, purposefully. Okay, and then this, for me, I think a theatrical, made-up assassination attempt with ketchup on the ear is also part of this theatrics that when Trump's come into power, and again, he will never be in power. He's not really in power. It's like the people
Yeah,
behind
exactly.
him.
Nobody's.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole point is that the empire itself needs to right now show its fangs. Okay, it needs to show its ugly face, its cowboy mode when it wants to go and have war with the Muslim world and war with the Russians and war with the Chinese. They try to do it with the New York, East Coast city folk face of Biden, and that didn't work to mobilize their vassals in Europe or in the region, and now they put this face. But it's because they want to go actually take action that is more drastic, like when, let's say, Bush comes in and he gives a cowboy face and he goes and kills millions of Iraqis and Afghanis and others. Okay, and then you take him out and you bring Obama and you're like, oh, now we've got the liberal face. Look, wait. And then he kills destroys 7 countries instead. Point is, it's all a game. And I'm sure our viewers love George Carlin. George Carlin was a master, not only a master of comedy, but a master of truth. These are the same owners that own both parties, that own all the TV stations, and they're in a club, and you're not invited to it. You're not part of it. Don't even try to say, wow, they tried to kill Trump because oh, he's a little bit against the system. What against the system? He is the system. He's part of it. He's an actor. He's a clown. That's what he is.
Might I add something to you? And one of the things that people don't take into account is the history of feudalism, right? And what would happen in feudal societies? This bunch of class of nobility or this family would get in a dispute with this class of nobility and family, and they would want to fight it out, but they only had a couple dozen or 100 people in their family. So they had to enlist the aid of the peasants or serfs, so that they could throw the peasants and serfs at each other to fight, so they could have the numbers to fight each other. And so they would have to lie to the peasants and serfs, blah, 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 and get the peasants and serfs riled up on behalf of this family or on behalf of that family. That's something I'm very familiar with, right? Okay, why do I say this? In the same way, there are factions of the ruling elite. And if you think about it right now, okay, so maybe the Wall Street faction or this faction or that faction, but look at what's going on now. All we ever see in the US that is put forth to us as struggles of democracy or policy are just fights between factions of the ruling elite. Here's my example. What do we have right now behind Trump? Elon Musk just said, I'm going to give $45 million a month to Trump. And who, for all of this stuff about JD Vance came up poor, this and that. Well, he's a financial guy, like a hedge fund guy, a venture capitalist guy. And where's his money come from? Peter Thiel, right? So you've got a Trump who's financed by the richest man in the world, right? And you got Vance, who's financed by Thiel. And if you think about it, aren't these guys similar? They're both kind of libertarian-esque guys. They're both new tech guys, right? This is a faction of the ruling elite that owns Trump. There was a faction of the ruling elite with Bush, right? He's from Texas, the oil people, the Exxon Mobils, etc., the Carlyle Group. That's who owned Trump, Cheney. Right? So when you look at the various factions of the ruling elite, the Wall Street people, that's who owned the Clintons. You know what I mean? New York, where's Hillary? New York. That was, so these are nothing but what would used to be called feudal families or families of nobility, factions of the ruling elite. And so now Thiel, who completely finances JD Vance, and Musk, who completely is going to finance Trump, own them lock, stock, and barrel. And you know what happens when they come in power? Now, guess what happens? They now say, you know, we need to spend more money on AI. They're already saying it. Why? Because Thiel's into AI. What are they going to say? We need a new energy network, and it has to be updated, and it has to have the Tesla, all that kind of stuff in it, right? So these guys are going to come in, and Trump and Vance are going to make them $1 trillion each. That's the game. This is just another faction of the ruling elite, the factions of the ruling elite. Oh, Wall Street, you own the Clintons. Oh, oil people, you own the Bushes. Well, guess what? We own Trump and so to me. And people think that it's a discussion amongst them. It isn't. It's various the DuPonts. I don't know how familiar you are with the DuPonts from Delaware. They own Biden. The credit card corporations, they owned Biden. And
yeah,
now,
look, I'm not saying
that
there's a big
What do you think of that?
conspiracy.
What do you think of that theory?
I'm not saying that there's a big conspiracy, and I think you're right. Obviously, like they're human beings, and sometimes people, underestimate the human factor, which actually is the most important driver of history. So yeah, definitely there is factions, there is disagreements, there's people that they're all thieves, and there's no honor among thieves, of course. And so yes, they're all fighting for the biggest piece of the pie. That's all true. And with the new world, there's constantly because of how accelerated development is, there's constantly new elites, and they're trying to make space. But within 5 years, there's a new billionaire that we've never heard of because of a new product, and so on. And so, yes, it's accelerated, and it's making it harder for these elites to intermarry and so on, because every once in a while somebody pops up, right? So it's, yes, there's more and more disarray in the elite and their ability to have a unified plan of things. And that's showing in general, the whole empire is collapsing, and a dying empire is an ugly affair. Okay, a dying empire is a tragicomedy. Okay, and it is a tragic comedy only if its collapse, uh, harms its citizens, and it's a full-out world war. If and a genocide, it will stop being a tragic comedy once that happens. If it doesn't, if this collapse actually becomes an explosion, not an implosion. But we hope. I'm from an outsider. I look at the American populace, I look at the Canadian, the European populace, and I don't see many people willing to make the necessary change, which will not happen in these ballot boxes. Look at change in this big requires a coup of military, as happened, let's say, in many African and other countries that want to take hold of their country away from forces that are taking it down. That's the only way. And is there anybody in the U.S. Military? Yes, and the Haitians
The
and the
Haitians realized
Arabs.
they were slaves, and
Yeah,
the Haitians knew clear that they were slaves, and they fought back against their masters to get out from under slavery. What we have is people that don't know they're slaves. They're so enslaved that they don't know that they're slaves.
yeah, yeah. And look, but what I'm trying to say is that in a situation of a state, like let's say Egypt or many of the countries post the colonization period, end of World War II, the decolonization period it was always led by officers. The free officers revolt in Egypt, led by Jamal Abdel Nasser against the puppet king and the British occupation. That's the only way you can right now do something like this, or you go into a militia war, and that's not something. But is there any de Gaulle's left in the French or American army, that could save off the collapse of the empire by going in and cleaning out house and nationalizing what needs to be nationalized, and spending on the people what needs to be spent on the people to build the nation? And the other path, as we see, even let's say I am wrong, that it wasn't a full act, this theatrics, this assassination attempt. That's an indicator of where things will go if no law and order comes in that whips the elite into shape and cleans up the country in terms of building it instead of wasting the money on these endless wars.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. Let me ask you this. I do want to get your opinion on Turkey. It's just very interesting. Erdogan, God only knows what's up, but the people of Turkey clearly strongly side with the resistance forces. Erdogan has been trying to do what he does, which is play all sides and try to stay in power and get what he can. I do understand, though, that the Turks are starting to have some discussions with the Syrians. There's a possibility that they could get that straightened out. What's happening with Turkey and Syria? Is there any hope on the horizon there?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Russians, the Iranians, and the Iraqis have been trying to get Syria and Turkey together. There was a proposal to host them in Baghdad, and Erdogan said he's ready. Twice he said it in front of the Turkish parliament that he's ready to meet with President Assad. That's what he called them. Our most valuable neighbor on the south, Syria. So this is like a crazy change in language. And just maybe 24 hours ago, a day and a half ago, President of Syria, Assad, spoke to the media and said there will be no point of meeting if there is not already an announcement of the Turkey withdrawing from all the sovereign territory of Syria, and then we will meet. Otherwise, our security and military attaches are meeting, but it's a clear indication, that Syria, the pride that it has historically, we saw even in its negotiations with Israel, there was never any meeting between the presidents of Syria and the Zionist colony until there will be something already admitted and signed of retreat from occupied Syrian territory by the Israelis. They would never have happened. And this is the same thing right now. And the question is, will Erdogan actually withdraw? He's under a lot of pressure from the Nationalist Party. That's why he spoke in front of the parliament twice in the last 10 days about this issue, because of the nationalist factions in Turkey are fed up with, number one, the millions of Syrian refugees in the country, number two, with the constant drain on the economy, with the deployments on the border and inside Syrian territory. So he's under a lot of pressure. Will he actually heed their call? I don't know. Will the regional war happen before or after? All of these are very hard to predict right now. How much will he be courted by Biden right now and or Trump? Even before Trump comes into power, he's probably trying to bargain with all these regimes in the country. And I would say, look at what happened in Saudi Arabia. In the last week, the Saudis started threatening Yemen again. And I think that only happened because now it's clear that the empire is going the extreme right side, or whatever. There's all right, it's, by the way, as the indigenous wise man would say, what if I tell you if these two are, two wings of the same bird? There's not really, in the end, for us here in the region, it doesn't make a difference. But look, the Saudis are taking indications that Trump is coming in. Therefore, there's going to be war against Iran, war against the axis of resistance. Therefore, they're starting to harass Yemen again, and the Yemenis now are threatening to attack Saudi airports and attack Saudi airfields and their oil industry hubs. So, Will Erdogan actually also follow in that Saudi path as he sees Trump coming in, or will he break off? I don't know.
Let me ask you this. So that one last thing. I think that that Ansar Allah is viewed as heroes a lot of places like here. I can only imagine even including Saudi Arabia, throughout the Muslim world, how people see the valiant effort of the Yemen people to resist U.S. imperialism. I don't think granted, it is Saudi Arabia. I don't think it would be popular in Saudi Arabia to try to fight, in any Muslim country now, to try to fight Yemen, to try to confront Yemen on behalf of U.S. imperialism. That could cause severe destabilization. There were beliefs by the Saudis that some of the people in their region assisted Ansar Allah with targeting some of their oil infrastructure in the past. So I would think that these leaders would be very worried and reticent about confronting Ansar Allah, even so much as that people in their own military may reject it and push back. I would imagine they're extremely popular right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, there's the whole region south of Mecca, the mountain regions of what is now inside the Saudi territory, that are actually Yemen, that were occupied in 1930 and 1932. And these are Yemeni population, mainly Shia. It's the same. You have the Shia all in the coast of the Gulf inside Saudi territory. These populations are ripe for a war. Okay, and they can see what's happening. This is above and beyond the fact that the Saudi population itself is 99%, as the surveys are saying, with the Palestinians, against the existence of Israel, and they don't want their government to be supporting Israel and the United States. So the Saudi government is on the edge. All the Gulf countries are very edgy. By the way, yesterday there was an attack in Oman, in Muscat, the capital, on a Shia mosque, and it's 3 gunmen walked in and sprayed the people gathering for the Ashura commemoration that we started talking about in the beginning of this segment. And this is the first time ever that there was an attack like that in Oman in decades. And all of this war on terror and all that, this has never happened in Oman before. So that shows you how the Saudi intelligence, the Emiratis, the Qataris, the West as a whole is trying to reactivate the Wahhabi death squads that were all minced in the death fields of Iraq and Syria, and they didn't have any more left of them. So they're reactivating them, reorganizing them, and to target Oman, it's a punishment because Oman has been, number one, the negotiating base between Ansarullah, the government in Sana'a, with the West, the United States, and the Saudis, and their Grand Mufti, the highest religious authority in Oman, has been outspoken since the October 7th on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on Fridays in his sermons and to the nation, defending the Palestinian people and shaming the West and exposing the genocide and calling for military support and shaming even other Gulf countries for their collaboration. And this was language that we haven't heard a religious authority in any Arabic country outside the axis of resistance speaking in these ways. So that was a clear indication that it's a punishment. But it shows you also how the whole Gulf, the Arabian Peninsula, is on a hot plate, really, right now. It's any major war that includes Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Palestine, it means that the Gulf is on fire. There's no way it will not be part of the battlefield in that situation. And we don't know where these states are going to fall, how their populations will react, and what's the damage for the whole world economy that will come out of that.
Laith Marouf has a great website. It's freepalestine.video. That's freepalestine.video. Make sure you go there to the website and that you follow they've got the links to all of their social media accounts there. So make sure you follow them on social media. And of course, make sure you donate, whether you can or whether you can donate or not. If you can't afford to donate, that's fine. But either way, please share freepalestine.video on all your social media accounts. Look at the things that they're putting up. They're putting up great stuff on their social media accounts. Retweet that, repost the stuff on their social media accounts so people can see what they're doing. And of course, share freepalestine.video on your social media accounts and put a little post along there that reminds everybody, hey, go there and hit the donate buttons and donate any way you can. And don't forget, you can donate. You can not just donate once. You can get on there so you can be a monthly donor. And that's great. That's recurring monthly revenue for freepalestine.video. Helps keep them going. Thanks a lot, Laith Marouf. Thanks a lot, everybody.